the take rate from that segment?
Thanks, Citi. I'll take that question. Look, I mean, just to say the thing, I mean, the enterprise is migrating to Shopify. I mentioned last quarter, some of the largest companies in their respective verticals are coming. Obviously now, companies like Elf Cosmetics or Estee Lauder joining us should tell you that the pipeline that we are seeing is quite incredible. Not to mention, brands that we talked about a couple quarters ago, Michael Kors, David's Bridal, Goop, Majuri, they're now fully launching on it as well. So I think it's not just that we're winning the enterprise in one particular vertical, it's a broad spectrum of verticals, and I think that strengthens our platform. We're also being able to go after more international merchants now with proper go-to-market in places like Europe, for example. Obviously, our core markets, North America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, are still doing very, very well. But it's still, I mean, it's hard to say this because I'm mentioning all these great names, but it's still fairly early days for enterprise. I think we are the best position to attract merchants while making sure the existing ones also improve efficiency. This is also, we're seeing a lot more partner-led deals. We're seeing Europe and Japan do really well right now. I think a lot of these companies are these large enterprise, especially the older ones, the ones that have been around for decades. They're having conversations in their boardrooms talking about where do we go to future-proof our platform? Where do we go to make sure that we don't miss out on agentic commerce? And all roads lead to Shopify. So whether it's food or manufacturing, or education, or even automotive, these are verticals traditionally we didn't go after, and now we're winning them. And we're winning them both from in-house built custom solutions. We're also winning them from some of the larger, we're displacing a lot of the larger existing enterprise platforms. And I think it's because the product and frankly, on the value side, the price to value of Shopify's enterprise product is simply best in class. And so, we're to keep winning these larger deals. I'm deeply involved in this particular area of our business. I often am and on the calls with the CEOs of these companies. And what I hear is that they're looking to future-proof their business. They want to sort of have what they call their final migration. And Shopify is that partner for them. So I think you can continue to see some of the most incredible brands, consumer favorite brands, continue to migrate to Shopify.
Yeah, and Citi, the only point I'd add, because you referenced the attach rate, one of the things that you see in our enterprise business, of course, is with all these brands that Harley talked about, is we have more and more success bringing more and more of these large GMV brands on the platform. That obviously gives encouragement to even more brands to follow behind and continue to adopt all the great solutions we have. And so I think we're at the front end of the funnel in terms of a lot of these larger enterprises maybe starting with just payments. But when you look at what we're seeing over time, compare that funnel to how many are also taking point of sale or taking other elements of our business, whether installments, some of the cross-border things we're doing. And so this, in a good way, is a multi-year step in the right direction as we continue to have merchants take on, especially the larger merchants, take on more and more products from us. So we feel good about, while there's short-term headwinds to attach rate, what that means long-term for our business is a positive.
It is also quite interesting, to watch some of these merchants, these very large enterprises, first come to us for a very specific, commerce component. So they'll come to us really just to talk about Shop Pay or just to talk about checkout. I mean, our checkout, obviously, we think is the best in the world. And frankly, checkout is so complicated. And we've really nailed checkout at a global scale and for scale for these massive merchants. But it's so interesting to see them first come to talk to us about exploring, hey, we just want to talk about checkout. And then within a couple of weeks, it's a full stack. It's, hey, we want all of Shopify now. That sort of land and expand strategy that we've been implementing for the last couple of years, or maybe the last 2 or 3 years or so, it's really starting to work out. And it's really cool to see these brands moving from just one thing to saying, yeah, just give us all of Shopify.
All right, moving on to the next question comes from Michael Morton at MoffettNathanson.
Good morning. Thank you for the question. Harley, today you've talked about product search. Toby talked about it, changing on the cheeky pint. And I would love to know, I know Shopify has a motto, you'll always be where commerce occurs. But as you see product search changing in conversational commerce, what do you envision happening for the product discovery funnel? Does that compress? And then in your world, over the next several years, how do you see the winners and losers of the e-commerce landscape evolving? Is it more merit focused on brands, as Toby referred to in the past? Anything on how you see the world playing out, not your product roadmap, but what you see commerce looking like several years from now, I think would be really beneficial to investors. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. We think about this a lot. Let me say this. I think there's going to be different permutations of how agentic commerce will evolve, how conversational commerce will evolve. It's really exciting. We're all talking about it. We're all excited about it. But the way that Shopify and the way that certainly, Toby sees it, ultimately, who is, who's really thinking about the visionary around our product. He's the one that really understands more than anyone on the planet how commerce and certainly retail is evolving, is that whatever permutation will emerge, that we have to be prepared for whatever path wins. That was the same thing when social commerce started to get a lot of attention, or when this idea of it's not e-commerce versus physical commerce, but it's going to be this idea of commerce everywhere. We think that one of the advantages of being on Shopify will be that we are everywhere that commerce is happening, and we always aim to get there first. So in terms of exactly how these conversations are going to happen, what we're building right now are these deep connections to AI agents. So when a shopper asks, it's a Shopify merchant who appears, and that is powered by our catalog. The idea of this catalog where buyers ask for products and the agent searches millions of items and displays interactive product cards directly in the chat, where the product it's robust, it's in real time, it is accurate inventory, localized pricing, it even has like smart product clustering. That's what we're bringing to these agentic tools. And I think, in terms of your question around who is going to win on the brand side or the retailer side, the one thing that I will say is and this has been happening for years, but you're seeing it now more than ever, is that consumers are really voting with their wallets to buy from brands that they absolutely love. And we've always said that Shopify is the place where consumers go to buy things that they want, things that they have a connection to. More and more, if not entirely, those brands are on Shopify. The reason that I spend time on these earnings calls and frankly, all day long talking about all the brands coming onto Shopify is I love the fact that these brands are coming on. It's very personal, and it's also very, there's a lot of pride for us at Shopify that the biggest companies on the planet are choosing it. But what I'm also trying to suggest is that consumers' favorite brands are on Shopify, and those consumers, they have a different connection with those brands than maybe they historically did, where it was just some sort of staple item. And so I think brands that have incredible product and incredible brand and incredible connection with the consumer, those are the ones that are going to win ultimately. And we're really fortunate that those are the brands that are on Shopify.
Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Todd Copeland at CIBC.
Great. Thanks, and good morning, everyone. I'm wondering if you can talk about your view of the state of the consumer by geography and post-tariffs now that we've seen a little bit of data there. Thanks very much.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the consumer, and then Jeff, you can talk a bit about tariffs. Look, consumer confidence for us is measured at checkout. That's the truth. That's what we look at. And on Shopify, shoppers keep buying, they keep returning, and demand remains really resilient across channels and categories. So I can only comment on what we see at Shopify, but whether it's the GMV, but like I said earlier, consumers are more selective right now, and they're buying from brands they love, and those brands are on Shopify. And I think even our Q4 outlook suggests that. But we're not complacent. I mean, this is not a place where we rest on laurels ever. We always monitor these macro factors, whether it's consumer spending, it's household savings, tariffs, frankly, even FX trends, and supply chains with a lot of our partners. But the strength of our merchant cohorts are pretty clear. I think quarter after quarter, they're growing faster than the broader market. In terms of geo, I mean, obviously Europe is definitely gaining traction for us. I mentioned that in my prepared remarks, which we expect to continue. But again, if you look at consumer confidence measured at checkout, you saw it through the GMV this quarter, $92 billion. We see that the consumers that care about brands, that are buying from brands they love, they're buying them from Shopify stores.
Yeah, and Todd, on some of the tariff pieces, on my prepared remarks, I mentioned that there's not been a whole lot of change what we've seen this quarter versus the prior quarters. There was a little bit of a downtick in what we're seeing in terms of merchants, in terms of how they're raising their prices. We've basically been tracking that since April, when there was a bunch of tariff changes, obviously in the U.S. It's ticked down a little bit versus what we had seen before. Pretty much everything else has been consistent versus last quarter. When we look at the trade routes, when we look at the percentage that is inbound versus outbound in the U.S., when we look at what we're seeing on de minimis, we've not seen any significant impacts on our merchants, at least from what we can tell from the data we have. We obviously put a lot of primacy in our proprietary data. We don't have as much visibility, admittedly, into some of the P&Ls of our merchants, so we can see from a price perspective what they're doing. Some of them are obviously choosing to, as they think about some of these price levels, pass those on to consumers in some way. And I think others are basically seeing that they're choosing not to do that. And it's impacting some of their own P&Ls. But you can see this in our GMV. Our merchant base remains strong. They're adapting quickly. And we're trying to do everything we can to help them on cross-border. So from a tariff perspective, between the April announcements and then obviously the elimination of de minimis, things have been relatively constant from our vantage point.
Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Trevor Young at Barclays.
Great, thanks. Can you expand upon Shopify campaigns? How do merchants get ramped onto campaigns? How do the economics work? And what do you foresee as the revenue opportunity from that initiative over the next few years? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think customer acquisition remains one of the hardest problems that merchants face. We've been working on this for quite some time now. And the way we're sort of looking at it is solving this problem in kind of two primary ways. The first is on shop campaigns, which I'll get to in a second, specific to your question. The second is on sort of discovery and merchandising enablement, which Shop app obviously plays a role in with helping merchants drive more traffic, increase lifetime value, and then Shopify Collective plays a role there as well. Specifically on campaigns, though, I mean, what we're really trying to do is we want to run commerce native performance ads across these high intent surfaces. And our strategy has been and continues to be to reinvest any gains we achieve through the ads business back into the growth. We want to ensure our advertising inventory and our scale continues to grow. And the proof has been really great. I mean, we've seen 9x year-on-year increase in budget commitments from merchants this quarter for campaigns. In fact, if you just look at Q3 2024 to Q3 2025, we've actually seen a 4x year-on-year growth in merchant adoption of campaigns. So it's growing really well. And on the product side, this thing keeps getting better and better. We introduced gross sales, which is this new default high reach objective in campaigns. We just shipped an AI-powered ranking improvement, which is showing some really good early results in terms of performance gains. But net, I mean, what we're trying to build with campaigns is the scaled ROI positive ad engine that really brings merchants more buyers and also unlocks more brand discovery to connect new consumers. So again, this is an area that we're going to continue to work on. We think that early signs have been good, but whenever there's a merchant pain point, we always much prefer to solve it for them than have them solve it themselves. And I think customer acquisition is one of those that we're going to keep working on, and it's already going pretty well.
Thank you for your question. And our last question will come from Mark Zgutowicz at Benchmark.
Thanks much. Harley, on the last quarter's call, you mentioned more to come on advertising opportunities. And, if we think about your merchants spending roughly 20% of their GMV on advertising, is there a longer term strategy in terms of a piece of that you want? Maybe if you could talk a little bit about that. And then specific to ChatGPT, I'm curious if there are ad rev share opportunities there in the future with promoted or sponsored listings for you. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk about any particular economics of any particular deal. What I will say when it comes to how we make money from these channels is we've always been able to monetize when our merchants do better. So this idea that merchants sell more, Shopify makes more, we monetize through GMV, we monetize through Shopify payments, that will always be the case across any new channel. And any specific, individual deal that has additional economics, we don't disclose. To the first part of your question around sort of ads, as I said in the last question, it still remains one of the hardest problems merchants face. We think we can do a better job. We have a ton of data. We have a ton of scale to do this with. The goal here when it comes to advertising for us is that we want to drive greater scale against this opportunity. The way that we do this is we're testing, we're measuring, and we're reinvesting to drive really great outcomes for merchants in the future. I still think it's still in early stages. I'll give you a little, nod to the fact that you should tune in to our next Shopify edition if you're interested in ads, because we're going to be spending some time on that as well. But this idea of focusing both on campaigns and then also focusing on the discovery and the merchandising elements through the Shop app and Collective, you're already sort of seeing quite a few breadcrumbs that we're laying down here to show that this is an area that we think we can add even and more value to. And again, it's one more thing that we do. We want to make sure that, the relationship that we have with the millions of stores that use Shopify is way more than simply being just some, software provider. We are their partner in commerce. And as commerce gets bigger and more complicated and more interesting, that they can continue to rely on us to be their partner. It's the reason why the biggest brands come to us, and it's the reason why they stay with us. I think it was the last question, so maybe I'll just spend a quick second or two just on some closing remarks as I've been doing the last couple of quarters here. I just want to kind of say this in case it's not clear, but I hope what is obvious now to all of you is that we are doing exactly what we said that we do quarter after quarter. We built AI agent tools last year. Now we're partnering with everyone that matters. We built Sidekick 2 years ago, well before any of the hype around that. And in Q3, 750,000 shops used it for the first time. 8 million used it. In October alone, we saw 8 million conversations happen there. So we built enterprise on-ramps into Shopify almost half a decade ago, and now the Estee Lauder companies, David Bridal, Aldo, Michael Kors, are all choosing us. We're not guessing the future of commerce here. We're really building it. And the thing that I'm most impressed with and most proud of at Shopify is that I think we're balancing three critical things simultaneously here. You're going to see us investing aggressively to capture these opportunities. You're seeing us maintain profitable margins, I think, that demonstrate our discipline. And you're also seeing us deliver durable results quarter after quarter. And that is compound execution. And I don't think there are many companies out there that can do all three at once at this scale. And we are doing that. So with that, I just want to say thanks for joining the call. And on behalf of Jeff and Carrie and I and the entire Shopify team, we're back to building for our merchants. Thank you so much for joining.
And that concludes our third quarter 2025 conference call.